of Deconversion Stories, and I have the good fortune today to be talking to Mr. Chris Shelton about his dealings with the Church of Scientology and how he ended up getting involved and why he left, and all sort of all the things that happened during his journey there and what led to him leaving, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Chris, as far as I know, the Church of Scientology is it technically a religion, or would you call it more of a cult?
Okay, well, it can be both. And I refer to it as a destructive cult. I use that term advisedly, destructive cult.
I would agree.
Right? And it is legally recognized as a religion, but I have made videos saying it's not legit. It's not a valid religion. The whole religious aspect of Scientology, while its believers or its followers really do believe it, it's a smokescreen. It's religious cloaking, right? For taking advantage of people. And I think that matters when it comes to the question of legitimacy of a religion. I think intent matters. I think context matters. And so I don't think that just because people believe something that makes it a religion, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So that's where I come from on that.
Okay. I would agree with you. Because it definitely falls under the quote unquote bite model.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right. So
yeah,
and you've actually spoken about that in one of your videos, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's behavior, information, thought, and emotion control.
Yeah,
for those out there, it's a model Steve Hassan put together based on Lifton's work.
That's right. That's right. And I would 100% agree. I would put really any religion under that category, a bite model of some sort. Maybe not everyone, because I don't think I'd classify Jainism as under the bite model. But
well, I tell you, there's a lot that fall outside of that. I refuse to say all religion is a cult because, or a destructive cult, because you have Wiccans, you have Hindus, you have Buddhists,
I was a Wiccan.
You know, yeah. I mean, you have these groups. Any group has the potential to become a destructive cult. Any group, religious or not, and a lot of religious groups tend to attract narcissistic type leaders or sociopathic type leaders. That's why we see it going on there more often than, say, you might see it in business or in sports clubs or something like that. But you know, it's kind of interesting. I'm told, I have not looked up any numbers, but I'm told it's quite a problem in the martial arts community.
Really?
Yeah, in dojos and stuff, you have guys who have no business being senseis, or trained or not trained. I mean, you have fake dojos, fake senseis, but you also have narcissistic authoritarian types. And I recently did a podcast actually with a guy where he wrote a book. I mean, he had a whole experience, about 7 years involved with a martial arts dojo where the leader was pulling crazy bite model culty stuff. And
wow, really?
Yeah, and apparently this is not that uncommon in that world. You know,
I was involved in judo, karate, and taekwondo in my youth, and I never really considered that. Of course, back then I didn't really know about that sort of model.
Well, it's funny. He pointed out, the guy I was interviewing, Louis Martin, pointed out really smartly, actually. He said, well, if you think about it, you know, you walk into a dojo, you're already agreeing to almost half the things on a destructive cult checklist. Just walking into the traditional, you know, you're going to wear a uniform. You're going to call somebody master.
Or
right?
sensei.
Or sensei, right? What does sensei mean, right? A teacher,
master,
right?
You're right, yeah.
Right, so you're going to call somebody this. You're going to automatically enter into a somewhat authoritarian structure. I'm not saying all martial arts is taught this way or has to be this way, or or even necessarily shouldn't be that way. That there shouldn't be authoritarian structures involved. But when you start putting those things in place, the invitation for abuse becomes much more, much more susceptible.
Yeah. As I always sort of just looked at it as more like a military hierarchy, I guess.
Yeah,
because you had the top sensei, you had his what do you call them? I guess
lieutenants.
Yeah, that kind of a thing, right?
So. Yeah. Exactly. But you get a uniform, you're
Yep.
calling people, you're bowing, you're,
Yep.
you're reverential, you are, and quite honestly, when you first get involved, if the sensei said, hey, go clean the bathroom,
You
you
go
do
clean the
it,
bathroom. Yeah, exactly.
and you're
You just
paying
do
him
such.
to do that.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. So it's not that the model has to be a bite model, has to follow that,
Hmm.
but it's interesting how it lends itself to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that now. It's weird that I never would have thought about that back in the day, right?
I didn't either.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Right. Well, let's get a little bit into how did you end up getting involved with the Scientology?
My
Bad
parents
cult?
grew up in it.
Really?
My parents got involved when I was 4.
Did they know Hubbard at all, or
No. No, Hubbard was off sailing around in the Mediterranean at the time. This 1974 I was born
poor
in
guy.
69. Yeah, I know, it's rough. And anyway, no, they never met Hubbard, but they did go all in. They actually got involved. We were out in California. They were divorced. They got remarried.
Mine did too. Wow.
Yeah, had joint custody of me. Then we had a family again, and I grew up around it. I grew up with the terminology. I grew up with the concepts, belief system. And then when I was 15, is when I actually started going down to the church myself formally and doing my own classes and counseling work. And that went for 2 years, and then I graduated high school when I was 17. And they recruited me to join staff there and work there. And this was in Santa Barbara, California.
17 you graduated. I graduated as well at 17. Were you are you an early month baby?
December 11th. Yeah, is my birthday. So I started like a year early. So
me too. But I'm October, late October. But,
there you go.
Same general idea. So yeah, I graduated at 17 as well. However, like you were saying about Mr. Hubbard cruising around the Mediterranean, I lived in the Mediterranean in Israel when I graduated. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was there for grade 11 and 12 because my parents figured I was becoming a bad kid and they should send me somewhere to better myself. And of course, the Israeli military did that for me, right? But,
yes, I can see the long hair comes from that. Yeah, absolutely.
No, they would have said, nope, that's got to come off.
That's got to go. That's got to go.
Yeah, but it's funny. It's freaky that when you wake up in the desert and there's a scorpion in your shoe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Luckily, I didn't get stung because it was one of them little tiny Israeli golden scorpions that are one of the more potentially deadly ones. So they always say, shake your boots before you put them on. So of course we did, and sure as shit, one fell out of mine one time. Old
Boy Scout rule too.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. You never know. So, well, when you say you were in counseling, or you were counseling people?
Both, actually, because what I did was one of the first 3 classes I took in Scientology was sort of a survey of Scientology basics, and that included giving and receiving student level counseling on one another. So we did some basic Scientology counseling on one another, and then I also did the Dianetics seminar during those first 2 or 3 years, and that was a weekend. I think I drove down to LA for that, but you work with somebody else and they audit you and you audit them, and it goes back and forth. Auditing is the word in Scientology for their brand of counseling, and it's a very loose word. I only use the word counseling to give some semblance of an analogy of what is going on in Scientology, but the counseling, quote unquote, that goes on in Scientology is its own brand of stuff, and it's pretty destructive stuff, very pseudoscientific. It's not really good therapy or good counseling. I just have to use those words to relate it to non-Scientologists.
Right. Right. Now that's when you are talking to people or counseling people, what kind of stuff did you talk to them about? Like, was there any, like you always hear about this Xenu person. Did any of that play into it? Or
no. None of that's in it. None of that enters into 95% of Scientologists' experience.
Okay.
Because you don't get there for years.
Right.
I didn't get there. and I was in for 27 years, but I didn't get there because I wasn't paying money. I was doing staff. I was working for the church. And so I spent all my time working for the church. I didn't do, I got up to the level of clear, which is kind of halfway. They have this chart, right? And this chart that my hand's always making all these motions in relation to this invisible chart you don't see. But there's chart. It's got levels on it, right?
I'm drinking. I see the chart.
Yeah, and this chart is called the Bridge to Total Freedom, right? And it's basically it's levels of indoctrination.
Okay.
It's a pyramid. They don't make it look like a pyramid, but it is a pyramid. It's this, you're climbing these levels and you're paying money, more and more and more money, and what you're doing is basically getting more and more and more indoctrinated.
Right.
And the Xenu stuff is up at the level called OT3. And those are operating Thetan levels, OT levels. And that's special Scientology terminology. But a Thetan is just another word for you as a spirit or a spiritual entity.
Okay.
So they have to have the specialized definition, because that's part of the whole, destructive cult trappings, is we have to have our own language. And, having a specialized language is not in and of itself bad, but when you add it with all the other crap, then it builds up into something. And in this particular case, Scientology has 2 dictionaries that are like this thick. They're big dictionaries full of specialized definitions and words that
Really?
Hubbard invented. Oh yeah, tons and tons. You could end up, once you become an educated Scientologist, you could have a conversation with somebody and an outsider would not understand anything you were saying. You're talking in acronyms and abbreviations and words, specialized Scientology words, and nobody would have a clue what you were even talking about.
So it's like its own language.
Yeah, it's got a lot of very specialized terminology that names completely made up concepts. There's no scientific basis in any of it, but Hubbard, invented all these words for it to make it seem special and different, and make it seem like, when you knew all this language, you were an educated person.
Do you think that somehow lends to the allure to become a Scientologist? Is now you get to know this special language, almost like a secret handshake kind of thing, or?
Probably not. Not. I don't think the language appeals to too many people. Most people are backed off from it pretty hard, but it's sort of a necessary evil you have to live with in order to get the concepts and stuff. This is kind of how Scientologists think about it. It's like, oh yeah, I got all this language, all these words, I got to learn all these acronyms. But you pick it up slowly and gradually. It's not like somebody throws the dictionary at you and says, memorize it tomorrow. That's not how it works, right? Okay. So you take a basic class and you learn ARC, the ARC triangle, affinity, reality, communication, right? This triangle that is supposed to be like this magical thing in Scientology. So you do a whole class pretty much just on that. So you graduate that course, and now you know about the ARC triangle, right? And that's just one of about 20 really major basic concepts of Scientology. But now you've got that one down, and then you do another class, and it's all about the wonders of communication, and you learn all about Scientology's special communication formula and Hubbard's advice about how to communicate, and you do a bunch of drills and exercises on communicating. And some of it's helpful, some of it's not, but at the end of the day, it's really just more, look people in the eye and talk to them when you're talking. Make sure you can be heard. Make sure you hear what they say. This isn't rocket science level stuff. But there's a few more added words there of a communication break, communication lag. Honestly, they use the word communication so often in Scientology that when I was 11 years old, it was a wonder to me that it was the first time I heard the word communication in a non-Scientology context. And I looked at my mom, 11 years old, and I said, "Isn't that a Scientology word?" And she laughs and she goes, "No, that's not a Scientology word." And I went, "Well, the only person I've ever heard say it are Scientologists." So I thought it was a Scientology word,
That's funny.
Yeah. So it builds slowly, but you build it up.
Now, did you ever question why they had this made up language?
No, it made perfect sense at the time. Here was this new concept. In fact, Hubbard even talks about it. He says, we use the word Thetan, for example, in Scientology, right?
Mhm.
Instead of spirit or ghost or
Okay. Oh,
entity,
okay.
because those words have baggage, right? A spirit, a soul, a ghost. I mean, there's all these pre-concepts that come with all of that:
Sure.
Catholicism, Christianity, spooks and spirits and all that kind of crap, right?
Sure.
So Hubbard wanted a break from all that, so he said, what we're going to do is we're going to use the Greek letter theta to represent in some kind of symbolic equation. Theta will be the symbol to represent a spiritual entity or the life force that is you.
Mhm.
The awareness of awareness unit, he calls it, right? It's aware of being aware. So that's what makes it alive, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well,
And
don't we
so
have
he's
something called theta waves? Because I know there's delta
actually,
waves.
yeah.
All right.
Well, and it's that, yeah, there's theta waves, which is a whole non-Scientology thing.
Right.
But in Scientology, yes, you do have you have flows, you have energy flows and energy waves, and a
Very feng
thetan.
shui.
Yes, a thetan is actually supposed to create things and influence the physical universe through energy waves and through pressor beams and tractor beams and stuff. Hubbard
Tractor.
really, yeah, he really said this, right? He said back, this
Wow.
is all back in 1952. Um, he said, look, you have this. He had to explain it to people who actually had some engineering background. So they were asking him all kinds of questions.
Mhm.
And because that's where most of the Dianetics followers came from. They
Right.
were, science types. And so back in the day, Hubbard says, well, you're actually not this body. You are a thetan. You're theta. You're created of something that doesn't actually exist in the physical universe, in the real world. It's not matter, energy, space, or time that makes up a thetan. A thetan is different from that. A thetan doesn't have location in space or time. It doesn't have any mass or measurement or anything like that. And then you go, okay, well then how does it exist? And you go, well, here's the simplicity of this, right? And when I was 11 years old, I totally bought into this. I mean, it made complete sense.
Yeah. At 11, you buy into lots of things.
That's right, right?
Mhm.
And you do buy into a lot of things. In fact,
Oh, yeah.
it's a
Me
little
too.
scary how much you can buy into. And so this is how Hubbard explains it: is he says, okay, close your eyes, get a picture of a cat. Now your eyes are closed. Who's looking at the cat? Right? That's your thetan. That's you. It's not your thetan, it's you, right? They take great pains to
It's in your
differentiate
mind,
this.
though.
Well, of course it's in your mind. It's called a visual hallucination. We have 10,000 of them every day. But
Oh, yeah.
in the world of Scientology, that's clever, right? That's like, oh, well, who's looking at the picture, right? Who's
Yeah.
mocking up the picture? Who's creating it in the first place, right? This is all you as a spiritual entity. And, when you don't know anything about brain science or neuroscience or psychology or sociology, or the fact that these fields exist and that there's a knowledge base and that people have been studying this stuff for centuries,
Mhm.
if you don't actually go and look and know about that, and hardly anybody does, you buy into this stuff. Oh, who's looking at the picture? Well, I guess I am as a spirit, and that's and
My
well, where
Satan version of me.
exactly,
Yeah.
and like I said, when I was 11 years old, this made complete sense to me.
Yeah.
And once you buy into an idea, it doesn't really matter how old you are, especially the younger you are. Once you buy into it, you just start building a knowledge base on top of it, because that's what you think is true.
Sure. That's basically what indoctrination is. You just keep adding to a belief and considering it to be true.
That's right.
Right?
Exactly. And if you have a basically false piece of information that you have been given, doesn't change the fact that the mechanics of building a knowledge base on top of it are still going to go.
Yeah.
You're just going to have this little poison pill in your thinking.
Yeah, that's
And
a good way of putting it.
that's what this does to you. And that's the problem with religious indoctrination at a young age, is these children are being taught things that are at a level beyond their ability to actually understand or think with.
Yeah.
That's my problem with that, you know.
Now, do you think that now for you, maybe, I don't know, but thinking back in the day when you were being taught this stuff and it was believable for you because you didn't clearly know better, but
Yep.
did you think that you were like, wow, I know a bunch of stuff now that most people don't know? Like, did you think you were like becoming special because of that?
Oh, absolutely. I remember
It's a part of the allure, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. I remember when I was 8 or 9 years old, trying to convince all my friends that the brain it doesn't matter. It's just a switchboard for the spirit, and it's the Thetan that's actually running things. I tried to do a whole little, Scientology lecture to my friends when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and they just made fun of me. And I mean, we're a bunch of 8 or 9 year olds, right? So of course we did. And we have a attention span of about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So, so that was my big failure, right? But it's funny how I still remember stuff like that. So yeah, I thought I had some inside skinny, and my parents, of course, had nothing but good things to say about Scientology, talked about it all the time. All of our friends, our social circle, were all Scientologists. So the kids I grew up with, or it's about half the kids I grew up around were Scientology kids. The other half were the ones I met at public school, because I went to public school, right? So I had an interesting, set of friends growing up and stuff too. And then in high school, it wasn't that way. I was the only Scientologist at that point. So that was, I didn't talk about it too much.
In high school, you mean?
Oh yeah. Because, high school, anything that's going to set you apart or possibly make fun of you is going to be you. So.
Oh, absolutely. It's like you're almost afraid just to be who you are.
Exactly. Well, that's pretty much the motto of high school, isn't it?
Yeah.
Be afraid of who you are.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because you're trying to figure it out. You don't have goddamn.
You're trying to fit in.
Right? Exactly.
Right? And I always found that there were like little groups and cliques. Like I was with all the stoners or whatever, the punk rockers or the metalheads, or then you had the jocks and you had the nerds or whatever. Which I'm a nerd too. So
yeah, that's where I was from.
I was just a stoner nerd.
Yep. Well, I was the no drug nerd. I was my friends actually were stoners, and they, to their credit, respected my desire to not be around that, because Scientology is rabidly anti-drug.
Okay.
So I never did any drugs until I moved to Colorado here and left Scientology. So,
well, some of the stuff I've heard about Scientology, you'd think that some of them had to be on some pretty damn good drugs,
right?
So yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
My one of my good buddy Inquisitive Quandary just posted your Patreon, because I think I actually did forget to put that one in the description below. So
thank you.
If you somewhere there, you should be able to see the chat if you are interested in seeing what.
I will look it up here in a second. Yeah.
Question for Chris from Dean Kruger. Demographically, are most Scientologists raised in it, or do they come to it later in life from the stress test, those little machine boxes that you see these guys?
I would say that you're now, in present time, most or many existing Scientologists are second, third, even fourth gen.
Okay.
That's where they're getting most of their re-signs, or people continuing on services, or recruits and stuff. That's where they're looking for that stuff. It used to be in the 50s, 60s, 70s through maybe the mid 80s into the 90s, maybe they were bringing new people in, but ever since all the exposure, it's been
kind of a closed group kind of thing.
It's just been very hard for them to recruit new people.
Right.
Everybody knows.
Yeah. A lot of people come out and started talking about that.
Exactly.
Now, do you ever feel that you might be, I've heard from others that were once involved that they're a little bit afraid to talk about it because they think that there's always people that could be climbing in their window in the middle of the night, sort of thing. Is that have you ever had to think about something like that?
Yeah, all the time.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Scientology has written policy to take out critics.
Wow.
It's not a joke. They are really serious about that. I don't mean kill. I mean, what they call it is fair gaming. Your fair game And it used to be a formal declaration. Now it's very, very informal, but it's very much still alive.
Mm.
And they'll come after you. They have sicked private investigators on people, go through their trash. They, follow them around. There's quiet and there's noisy stalking and harassment, right? So there's times when they're doing stuff to you and you don't know where it's coming from. I've been trolled. I've had weird emails. I've had some weird stuff happen to me. And then you have the overt fair gaming where, like, for example, I've got a hate website on me. Leah Remini has actually, my page is part of Leah Remini's show website by Scientology to take down Leah and every single person who tried to speak about their experience in Scientology. They just trash them on this website. And so the day after I appeared on the show, boom, here's a video of my ex-wife, who's still a Scientologist, trashing me. And here's a bunch of information about how I'm a horrible person because of A, B, and C. And if that's all you read, you might think, well, that's a little over the top, but that's kind of bad. But none of it's actually true. It's all just, they take a little thing and then they do a half truth and then they alter this and they miss it. The spin is amazing. It's amazing. So, and this is, it's crazy. It backfires on them all the time, but it's policy. L. Ron Hubbard wrote very specific policy that says you are to ruin them utterly. And them being critics, right? Ex-Scientologists, bad people.
Did any of them ever try and lure you back into the belief? Or
not since I've been speaking out. No. After when I was trying to cooperate. It's a long story, but I was trying to cooperate near the end and be a good chicken and go along with what they wanted and follow their instructions and all that. Even though I, at this point, knew, this was at the end of 2013, I knew at this point it was bad. I'd gone down the internet rabbit hole. I knew this isn't the thing. And the church had contacted me, or I had contacted the church, and we were sort of working out this sort of like, okay, I'll stop speaking publicly and you guys won't disconnect me so I can still maintain my connections and that kind of thing. And then they did disconnect me anyway. They said, yeah, you're going to do these steps, but we're also going to not let you talk to any Scientologists, especially your fiance, that you don't get to talk to her anymore. Or her whole family. And so, yeah, that's all gone. And
so they literally like severing a limb with you.
Yeah. Overnight, it was all gone. And so this was, like I said, back in 2013. And after they did that, I said, look, I was trying to cooperate with you guys. I wasn't going to say anything. I wasn't going to be the whistleblower. I wasn't going to be the bad guy. I was going to be a good guy. I was going to go be quiet and cooperate and go along with your bullshit, because I wanted to maintain my connections, But one of the things they do when they don't like you is it's called disconnection. It's literally called that. And no Scientologist who is told about this, and they're all called up and told, they can't be Facebook friends with you. They can't see you. They can't be related to, they can't like anything, nothing, no connection.
Hence,
none.
Disconnection.
Yeah, it's complete. It's not with reservations. There are no reservations. It's total, complete, and it doesn't matter whether it's your son, daughter, mother, father, grandmother, business relation, doesn't matter. Once the church says this is a bad guy, that's it.
Yeah. It's shunning, basically.
Exactly.
Like the JWs do with their ex-members too.
That's right.
Wow,
short of what Islam does to apostates, it's about the most severe form of, dealing with apostates or ex-members that any religion on the planet has.
Right. Well, they all sort of. I mean, my story is a little bit on the different side. I'm adopted, and I know my biological folks. They were variations of Christians, but I was raised Jewish by a Jewish couple. So hence the whole Israel thing and stuff. But yeah, it's weird because in just non-denominational type Christianity, you don't really see a lot of shunning, and same with Judaism. You don't really see a lot of shunning. You might lose respect from some of your relatives or whatever.
Right.
I'm sure some of my relatives don't view me the same way as they used to, but for the most part, they're cordial and whatnot. But shunning is something that I personally never experienced. And it blows my mind that people could actually do that to somebody they claim to care about and love. So,
well, that's the thing. And it's really, that is one of the biggest markers of destructive cults, right? Is what do they do when you want to leave?
Yeah.
That's one of the key questions to ask, because, you know, the reason why we look at Catholicism or many of the denominations of Christianity or Hinduism or whatever, and we go, well, no, we're not really talking about a destructive cult there, is because you can leave and they're not going to blink twice. I mean, they're not going to look at you twice about it. They don't care. A cult, a destructive cult, will follow you, stalk you, harass you, do everything possible to prevent you from leaving. I mean, hell, in Scientology, we called it a departure deter. You know, like we're gonna stop this guy from leaving. You know, so this is a thing. You know, it becomes almost a formalized process in a way, and this is very much a thing in Scientology. And for the most part, it has to do with the fact that these people are so desperate to maintain a membership of some kind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why it happens. But you know, and then you get something like the JWs where they've got 7 million members.
Mm-hmm.
They're just that's just built into the DNA of their group now, that they're an authoritarian extremist group. So size isn't really the thing. You know, a lot of people say, well, the difference between a cult and a religion is the size. You know, no, that has nothing to do with it. It's not the size. It's what they do.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, a few people in the chat have mentioned it sounds like what JWs do and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. JWs are definitely a cult. Mormons less so, but they're still culty. They got all kinds of culty stuff going on.
I got friends that are ex-Mormons, like Dear Mr. Atheist, like Jimmy Snow, and
oh yeah, exactly. He's here in Colorado.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and also I was going to make the point that they don't all have to be religious in order to be a destructive cult.
No,
right?
They don't.
Like we talked about at the beginning, right? Martial arts dojo, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, Enron was really culty, and that was a business.
That's true too. Yeah,
they were super culty at the top. They were whack. Enron was those guys were crazy. I mean, what they were doing at the end was, if you saw the Gibney documentary, it was quite something.
Not, no.
Yeah, it's called The Smartest Man. I think Enron, smartest man in the room, or smartest person in the room, or something like that, because that's how they thought of themselves.
So Dean Kruger wanted to know, this part of the job that I kind of like is how the chat can ask.
Yeah, I like these comments. These are great. I've been eyeballing these.
What are the criteria for being labeled a suppressive person, and how far can you push the envelope?
Yeah, labeling as an SP is the final step. It's the final worst thing they can do to you, basically, in terms of kicking you out, because it always goes hand in hand with being kicked out. If you're declared, you're disconnected, right? Those two things go hand in hand. You're expelled from the church, is how they put it.
Right.
And so there are a lot of earlier steps that they can and mostly do use to try to get you in line first. There's a whole formalized justice system within the world of Scientology that has courts of ethics, committees of evidence, conditioning formulas. Yeah, these are specialized terms again. I'm just throwing them out here because they sound kind of formal, right? A committee of evidence. A court of ethics, right? Well, what it means is you get it's a snitching culture. So the first level of correction is you get reports written on you by other Scientologists who have knowledge of the horrible things you've been doing. Let's say you went on the internet and looked at some anti-Scientology stuff, or you watched an episode of Scientology in the Aftermath. And that's very bad. You're not supposed to be doing that in Scientology. That's like you are supposed to self-censor. You are not supposed to be looking at bad stuff on the internet. So let's say you do, and you and another Scientologist hears about it or sees it or something and writes a report. That report goes to the ethics officer at the local church that you go to. And the ethics officer gets this report one fine day. You're supposed to get a copy of it, but that hardly ever happens, by the way. But let's say that this person, writes a report on you. So you get a copy of the report. You go, okay, well, that sucks. Somebody reported me for watching Leah, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the ethics officer calls you. Hey, got this report on you. I need to see you.
Uh-oh.
Right? That's all they'll say. They won't go into the specifics of it. Oh, what's the report about? Just come in. We'll talk about it in person. Right? You're just told you got to come in. Right? You come in. This ethics officer sits you down in a room. Usually we'll put you on an e-meter, but not always, right? You got the e-meter with the cans and stuff, right? Which is basically a lie detector is what it's. The simplest way for me to say what the e-meter is it's 1/3 of a polygraph machine. It measures skin resistance. That's what the meter is doing.
Right.
But Scientologists believe that the e-meter registers their thoughts. It doesn't,
Really?
but that's what they think it does. So you get hooked up to this e-meter, you pick up the cans, and the guy is interviewing you or interrogating you on the meter. So he's watching the needle to see what it does when he asks you questions. And if it responds to his questions, then he's going to assume something's up. And he's going to ask you questions like, why did you watch Leah's show? Is there something you've done that Scientology should know about? Is there something that you've done against Scientology? Like, they'll start asking you these questions to pry out of you what bad things have you been up to that would cause you to want to go look at anti-Scientology material. Right? Because you wouldn't look at any of those vicious lies about Scientology if your ethics were in and you were clear with the organization, would you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the assumption. And that's how thought control happens.
How can you be holding some? I don't understand how that works.
They're cans about this size.
Yeah.
And they are connected. You hold two of them, and they're connected
wires
by wires to an e-meter. And the cans enable an electrical signal to go through your body. It actually conducts over your skin. It doesn't go into your body because the signal is not anywhere near strong enough to push through your skin.
No,
but it goes. But the electronic circuit, is basically measuring the skin resistance of your body, and that skin resistance is affected by sweat, muscle tension, autonomic nervous system activity.
Sure. Yeah.
Parasympathetic activity, right? So you think a thought, all kinds of things go into play. Hormones fire, neurotransmitters fire, right? Things are moving around in your body. Your blood flow changes, right? It can change. Temperature can affect things too, right? But the meter is supposedly tuned to filter out body reactions. So it's only measuring mental reactions, but that's the lie. The lies start right there, because there is no difference between a physical reaction and a mental reaction, because all mentality is brain activity.
That's right.
So, so you're not measuring some invisible, immaterial spirit. But the theory is in Scientology is that the spirit is creating sheets of energy that are mental image pictures. So if I say, get a picture of a cat, and you close your eyes and look at a cat, what you're actually doing is your thetan perception is sort of writing itself over a sheet of energy that it perceives as a mental image picture. And that sheet of energy impinges on the body, and that's what changes the resistance to the electrical signal. That's what they believe is registering on the meter, are these invisible sheets of energy that you as a thetan are creating when you look at pictures of stress and trauma in your past.
Right.
None of what I just said is true. Not one little bit of it is true.
Disclaimer.
But that is literally what they believe is happening.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you cannot disprove any of it, because how do you disprove something that doesn't exist, right?
Well, I would say, how do you disprove something that's never been proven?
Well, exactly. There's no proof for it. It's an unfalsifiable claim, because you're talking about sheets of energy that are supposedly using electronics of such a fine nature that Hubbard said it hadn't been invented yet here on Earth.
Right. Well, if it's a form of energy, we would be able to measure it. So
Supposedly, right? But gibberish, 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 like Andy Dell there says, right? It's like that's exactly what this is.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I actually bought into it, and a lot of other people did too, because you can, one of the things about critical thinking and learning about this stuff that has been so eye-opening to me that I like to share with people is we really have to come to realize, we really need to get that any of us are capable of believing anything
Oh, yeah.
if we are motivated to do so. And the secret to controlling people is not fooling them, it is motivating them to want to believe you.
Yep. That's how
Which I
cult
guess
leaders
could
work.
be the same. Yeah, I guess you could be the same thing and stated a different way. But I feel that framing is important because people don't join cults on purpose. They don't knowingly do that. No one ever does. They truly believe they are doing something helpful and useful and survival for themselves.
Or they
And,
believe it because they've been convinced of it, for sure.
well, exactly. And so we don't have our guard up. And it's easy to fool us. It's easy, to fool people 24/7,
many
right?
times.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So when I talk about this stuff, I always love it because everybody's like, "Oh my God, that's so crazy!" How could anybody believe that? And I always have to point out, okay, slow your roll there. If you go through some of the stuff you believe, you might find some pretty crazy things in there too. So
Yeah.
I only stress that because I'm trying to stress that people who get into this stuff are not idiots. They just fell for a belief system because they felt motivated to, because they honestly, truly believed, as I did and as every single Scientologist I ever met truly believed, it was going to help them.
Right. That happens a lot. Like in any belief system, that happens a lot, especially if they're able to pull at little strings you kind of have a belief in already.
Exactly.
That they can lure you in even more. And that's kind of one of the dangers of these systems as well, is because now indoctrination works that way, right? I mean, you're raised in it or born into it. Well, in my case, it was a little different. I wasn't actually born into Judaism. I was born into Christianity, but raised Jewish due to circumstances. So, yeah, and I believed a lot of that stuff. But I remember going through Hebrew school and learning about the Old Testament stories like David and Goliath, etc., and starting to think, this can't be right. There's just no way.
I wish I'd had that kind of critical thinking when I was a kid.
I was 7 or 8.
Indoctrination's a hell of a drug.
Yeah, it is. It is. But, some people catch on a little bit later than others too. But I just remember talking with my friends and saying, do you believe this? Like this, there's no way. And they go, well, yeah, I kind of, but that's why I think, especially in Judaism, you find more people have referred to themselves as secular Jews nowadays because they don't necessarily believe the stories so much, right?
Well, I'll tell you what blew me away was I have a friend, Rachel Bernstein, who's a cult recovery expert.
My last name is Bernstein too.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Well, Rachel's out in LA and she is Jewish, obviously. And she told me, I mean, she was the one who told me that she knows a rabbi who's an atheist. And I'm like, yeah. A what? Like that really blew my mind. There's not a lot. I'm not as well versed in Judaism and rabbiism and all that as I
rabbiism.
Yeah, could be. Otherwise, because when she told me that, my head exploded. I was like, what?
Actually, a new character on Fear the Walking Dead is a secular rabbi, actually. So I don't know if you watch the show. Yeah.
Well, I don't do The Walking Dead. It's just too much torture porn at this place.
Torture porn.
Oh my God, it's awful. From like season 4 on, it's just pure torture porn.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Anyway,
I still watch it though because I got hooked on it from day one. So I'm trapped within the realm.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I even have the game on my phone.
Oh my God! Join us. See, exactly. I'm not in any cult now. I know what's up.
Well, the reason I got into it is because I read the comics and graphic novels back in the day when they first came out, right? So, and they totally took bizarre turns on the TV show that weren't even in the comics, right? Like there's no Daryl in the comics, so. But
there is no Daryl in the comics?
Nope, there's no Daryl.
With the crossbow.
That's right.
That's a major character. Do they encapsulate other characters into what he does, or is that just a totally invented thing?
He's an invented character for the show.
Wow. Yeah. I did not know that.
Yeah, well.
I did not know that.
See, folks, you can learn things on my show too.
Every day. Every day. Anyway, we've definitely diverged off of my deconversion story, but but you know, this is fun.
I told you this would be fun, right?
Absolutely.
Usually people come on here, they say they really don't know what to expect, and a lot of them are nervous. So I'm like, don't worry. Within 10 minutes, you'll be fine. Relax. It'll all be good. Yeah. My show's really laid back, and I don't really I like hearing about the deconversion stories because I think they can help people that are having doubts, sitting on the fence, and to know that there's a community of others out there that were once where they are, and that it's fine and safe to jump down off that fence and be with us is I think helpful to these people. It gets them away from all that stuff, right? So
big time. I originally was tuning my channel to try to reach ex-Scientologists, or reach Scientologists rather, fence sitters or whatever, and it's worked to some degree. It's funny though how you reach people in other cults by talking about your I will reach more JWs and more Mormons and more Christian-based cult people than I have reached Scientologists.
Right.
You know, directly.
Do you think it's because the Scientologists don't want to see what you've got to say?
Oh, absolutely. They're like I was talking about. You get in ethics trouble very quickly in Scientology if you go looking at stuff that you're not supposed to. And the two there are multiple control points, but the two strongest ones are the snitching culture, where people are writing reports on one another all the time. This is constant. There are reams of knowledge reports. I mean, they have files and files of this stuff. Every single person in Scientology has their own ethics file. Soon more than one, because every report that ever gets written on you is filed in these reports.
Really?
And they have a running record.
Good and bad stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Commendations as well, right? You give a lot of money, you do a good thing, you get a commendation. But really it's the reports that get you in trouble. The second thing, and even more powerful though, is the self-policing, and you learn that pretty quickly. There's a number of lines, you know, when you have 70 years, and Scientology's been around since 1950, when you have that long to figure out, you know, what are the best lines to use? What's the best, most convincing way to say this so that the person will get it? You know, they figured all that stuff out. So, like, for example, the reason why you self-police and don't look at any negative Scientology stuff on the internet is because it's all lies.
Right. Well, that's what they tell you, I guess.
It's all lies. But the line that's used is, well, if they wanted to know about Scientology, why don't they just come into an org and find out? We're Scientology. We can tell you all about it. Why would you have to go to some guy who took off, who's now negative Nelly about it, and he's just telling a bunch of lies? In fact, let me show you his suppressive person declare that in writing on this goldenrod piece of paper that lists out all of his crimes and all the horrible things he ever did as a Scientologist. We're gonna read this. You want to listen to this guy? This is the guy you're gonna take Scientology information from? Okay, that doesn't make any sense, right? We're the ones who have Scientology, so you know, don't look at the internet. It's full of a bunch of crap, right? And people can easily.
That's kind of true.
Buy into that. Exactly, right? What you do, that's a confusion technique, and it's brilliant because it works almost every time. And it's not even like what I'm about to tell you is a structured, formalized thing in Scientology. It's just that this is how this stuff works. Anybody can post anything on the internet. The internet has there's a lot of porn on the internet.
Oh yeah, it's the most visited sites in the internet.
So why would you go to the internet to find out about Scientology when you can just walk into a church? Now, here's the brilliance of this, right? The reason I'm holding up my fingers is because one true piece of information. Anybody can write anything on the internet.
Yep.
There's a lot of porn on the internet. Piece of information number 2. Those are both true pieces of information.
Sure they are.
That have nothing to do logically with point number 3.
Right.
Why would you look on the internet for anything about Scientology? See, it's a question, right? But it's predicated on these first 2 points of how awful the internet is and how anybody can say anything. So therefore, right, in Scientology, this is a logical sequence of events. But the fact of the matter is, they're just controlling your thinking with crap like that, right? That's not logical at all.
Nope.
You should be able to look at anything you want to at any time.
Absolutely.
But
right.
Thought control is tricky, right? So I throw 2 pieces of true information at you. I then ask you a question, the way our brains work, you're tuned to think, oh, makes sense, good. I won't look at anything negative on the internet anymore,
Yeah. Yeah. But the internet is useful too. I mean, obviously, people when
just about Scientology.
Okay.
Just about Scientology. Yeah, you can still look on the internet about other things. You can go do research. I mean, hell, a lot of people have to work on the internet. It's not looking at the negative Scientology stuff that's the important part, and that's where they self-police. When you get into the Sea Org, by the way, which is just to throw some more confusion into all of this.
Actually, somebody asked about that in the chat.
Yeah, I was in the Sea Org. I was in for 17 years, right? So I worked at the highest levels of the church because the Sea Org is as high as you can get. That's the billion-year contract, military uniforms, 24/7 operation, eat, breathe, sleep Scientology. That's all you do. Mm-hmm. You don't have another job. You don't have a life. You just are doing Scientology.
Now, do you get paid for that? Or?
Yeah, $50 a week.
Oh, where do I sign?
Yeah, right? They're paying for your food. They're paying for your uniform.
Your expenses are taken care of. Then.
Your expenses are your room and board's basically covered. You live on a Sea Org base in a dorm with other men, or if you're a female, obviously with other women. If you're married, you get your own room. And there is no premarital sex, by the way, at all. Well, so you got to get married in order to have sex. So people get married fairly quickly.
And then divorce.
Oh, yeah, that happens. I knew Sea Org members who'd been married 5 times. Right.
Really?
And they were in their 30s. I mean, I have seen everything. Right. So the Sea Org, on the Sea Org bases, a lot of the abuses and criminal activity and nonsense that you've heard about or seen on TV about Scientology is really talking about the Sea Org level of Scientology. A lot of the abuses that occur there are not propagated down to the public. The public Scientologists, the people who are just paying for their services and doing
sure.
their stuff, they get financially raped and they get, pillaged all the time. And there's a lot of pressure on public Scientologists to pay a lot of money or to join staff or join the Sea Org. They get recruited all the time. But their experience tends to be a lot less abusive than the staff. And then at the higher level, the Sea organization. And that's because, of course, you're moving up that pyramid of commitment. And at the Sea Org level, you have literally dedicated not just this lifetime, but all your future lifetimes for 1 billion years to Scientology. And that's a serious commitment that Sea Org members take seriously. They really do believe that that's what they're doing. It's not symbolic. It's not like the 1 billion years is sort of an analogy or some some symbolic thing. It's not that. They really take it's literal. They really think that's what they're doing.
Yeah. So they think
I only made it for 17 years. Then I couldn't take it anymore. So I kind of broke that contract. Yeah. I fell a little short of the 1 billion. But yeah, that's what that was about.
Well, there is lots of time left for our universe. Apparently, it's something like 800 quadrillion, quintillion, bazillion years. Everything will go out in a heat death with the last black hole exploding.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean,
well, you're gonna love this one. According to L. Ron Hubbard, This universe is 4 quadrillion years old.
4 quadrillion.
Yes. That's how long we as Thetans have been here in this physical universe.
Really?
Yes. 4 quadrillion years ago.
I think cosmologists and astrophysicists might have an argument against that.
You think?
Yeah, maybe a small one anyway.
Yeah. Well, get this. I love sharing this stuff because it's so much fun. Then the reason Hubbard said that the dating is all wrong and that astrophysicists and geologists and all these people get it so wrong is because they are using carbon dating.
Well, that's one of the things they use.
No. According to Hubbard, that's all they use.
Okay, well, which version of it?
And
14.
the reason why the reason why all the carbon dating is wrong is because it's based on an assumption of how much carbon there was in the universe at the very beginning of time, and their assumption was wrong, you see, and Hubbard knows this, and so this is why their dates are all wrong, because the E-meter says differently, and the E-meter is clearly the senior authority in this matter.
Yeah, that amazing piece of technology.
The more I repeat this stuff, the sillier it gets. I love it.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's wonderful stuff, man.
We're getting close to the hour now, Chris. So
cool,
is there anything else you wanted to let us know about before we jump into the little bit of an after party there?
Oh, well, I was wondering, I mean, were there any other key questions we missed? I was only loosely paying attention, but
I think I saw all the relevant ones anyways.
Okay, good. Well, good times on all of that. You know, I can talk Scientology all day long. I mean, I have. I've you know, there's a lot to it. Scientology is one of the most destructive of destructive cults out there, and this is from not just me, but other cult experts have said this as well. And the reason for it is not because of their rapaciousness or their greed or their vindictiveness. It's because of the sheer volume of control mechanisms that exist in Scientology, because almost every single introductory service, and certainly once you get into the counseling and the upper level services, are using methods and techniques on people that are mind altering in not just change your mind kind of ways, but really some of them are very psychologically damaging. There's procedures that gaslight you all by themselves, make you gaslight yourself. Really? I mean, there's some pretty wild stuff in there. There are some levels of mind control in Scientology that are formalized processes, not just conversations or showing you some pictures or subliminal advertising or something. I'm talking about really dig in and screw with your head kind of stuff. And it's bad. And people have gone crazy. People have committed suicide, and there have been deaths. So, I joke about this stuff, but I want to leave with a warning, because it's not really, at the end of the day, I'll laugh about it all day long because it's cathartic and it's funny.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, this stuff is dangerous, and people are losing their college funds, their cash in their 401ks to pay for Scientology services that Scientology gladly, happily takes all their money. And then it's like in that way, it's like a wave of locusts. They just come into your life, rip and just leave you destitute. And that has happened more times than I can count. Wow. But the mental damage that it can cause especially, like I said, at the upper levels, when you get into the really heavy, Xenu and post Xenu stuff, can be really damaging. So I want to make sure I make that point, so it's not all just airy fairy fun and game stuff.
Sure, absolutely. We've been over the last hour basically talking about the more loony kind of side of it and having some fun with that. But yes, we must iterate that this type of thing can be extremely dangerous and actually bring families to destitution, I guess you might say. They could milk them for everything, and then you're stuck in this group that now you're basically relying on them for everything. And
exactly.
That can be very degrading, I would think.
Very much so. Very much so. And it's taken people years. I'm not even exaggerating. I know it sounds like I am, but it's taken people decades to get over this stuff.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
It's bad. So,
but you seem like you're in a much better headspace and better frame of mind than you for leaving, for sure. And you've only been out for what, like about 10-ish years, I guess?
7 or 8 this year.
Okay, so 7, 8 years.
Yeah, and 2013. Yeah.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you found your way free, Chris, because you're a personable guy. I've been watching some of your videos, and by the way, guys, Chris has lots of great stuff on his channel. You really should check out. He has some really interesting videos. I think my favorite one is actually one of your fairly recent ones, the one about I posted it the other day, and now I hate it because sometimes my brain just goes, you're not going to get access to that memory. But it was the one about for crying out loud. Let me just,
no problem.
Let me just grab that one because it was a really, really good one. I'll find it in like 2 seconds here. Go to your channel, and it's like one of the promoted ones, I think.
Oh,
conspiracy theorists.
Oh, yes.
Conspiracy theory.
Yes.
That was such a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. Make that the first one you guys watch, because Chris talks about conspiracies. Conspiracies are real. They do happen. But conspiracy theories is a whole other ball of wax. So it's really, really cool. That one
very related in many ways to cults in a lot of ways.
Exactly, yeah. Which I think is and I thought you had a really good take on the whole thing on that.
Thank
video,
you.
So.
Thank you.
Well, Chris, man, it's been awesome talking to you, man. It's such a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking the time to talk to me today, because I know you're a fairly busy dude. So
no worries, and happy to do it again.
Ah, awesome. Well, can you come? Yeah, well, I already know the answer to this. But you're going to join us for a little bit for the after party, which will be a brand new link that I'll send you.
Yep.
So refresh your drink, and I brought a cooler with me, so I'm good.
Excellent. Yeah. I'll see you in a few minutes.
Yeah, and guys, once again, all the relevant links for Chris's stuff, except for his Patreon, but then I'll add that afterwards. But Inquisitive Quandary did add it in the chat. He's definitely worthwhile. I'm actually considering becoming a patron of yours as well, because I really am behind what you talk about. So I'm a patron of many people, and I have my own Patreon too that you guys can also, if you want to join as well. I've got 3 now, which is a start, but I just started it up, so it goes slow. And if you guys do dig what I do here on the show, there's a link, or multiple links, or ways you can help support the show via Patreon, via PayPal, and also my Amazon wish list. And I'll let you guys know. There's your Patreon right there. I'll let you guys know that the things I really kind of need right off the hop is the light bar, because I lost my lamp here, my fuzzy cover for the microphone, and the carrying case for the microphone itself. So when I go down to Texas for Faithless Forum, it won't get all destroyed and stuff. And I'll be bringing my video camera with me this year, so there'll be more footage that I'll upload onto the channel. But all right, Chris, thanks again, man. Let's jump into an after party, and we'll chat with a few people. If you guys are interested in saying hello to Chris, and you might have had a question that you forgot to ask in the chat, let me know, and I'll send you a link through Twitter or Facebook if you're not on Twitter. And you can jump in with Chris and I. He's got about 15 minutes or so that he can stick around. And then he's got, as we were saying before, happy wife, happy life. And she's probably
exactly.
So we'll get into it in about 5 or 6 minutes, because I'm going to go and have a pee and a smoke, as I usually do between shows. And then I'll send you a fresh link, and we'll jump in for a bit. All right. Thanks, everyone. Happy New Year and happy holidays to everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. We'll be back shortly. And as I always say at the end of these things, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.